Hello at In Town Smile Studio. We're checking in with you again during this COVID-19 crisis. One of the things that we've learned over the last week is that there's a new category of people who are at real risk for dying if they are infected with this coronavirus. So before, we knew that the elderly population and the immunocompromised population of people were extremely at risk for this, and all of the work that we were doing to social distance was really to protect that group of people. That's one of the reasons that many of our leaders were encouraging millennials to participate in the social distancing, was really to protect the millennials, because we knew, or was to protect the elderly and immunocompromised population, because we knew that the millennials weren't really at risk for dying if they contracted this virus. What we're seeing now is that there's another population of people who are at real risk for dying if they're infected with this COVID-19. And that is the population who have other health concerns. In the news, they're calling them comorbidities. And the other health concerns that they're pointing to are things like high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. And it turns out that if you have one of these comorbidities, it's really looking like you might be really susceptible to having a really bad outcome or even dying if you contract the coronavirus. So one of the things that these comorbidities have in common, high blood pressure, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, is one of their common root causes is chronic systemic inflammation. And we'll get to that in just a minute when we start talking about your mouth health. The other thing that they have in common is that most cases of high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity are not only treatable by applying healthy lifestyle measures, but also in many cases reversible. So that means if you already land in the population where you have one of these other health concerns, there are some action steps that you can take to turn that ship around and start to reverse the disease or the health concern and get you back into the population of people who are healthy and probably won't have a bad outcome, might not even have any symptoms if they are infected with COVID-19. So how does the mouth fit into all of this? Well, as a complete health dentist, I practiced under the context of complete health for my patients. And what I've studied for many years is the link that a healthy mouth plays to the rest of the total health. So in other words, if your mouth is extremely healthy, you can reduce risks for those four things: high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. And how that works is, if your mouth is unhealthy, your body responds by putting up an inflammatory response in your mouth. So let's say it's gum disease or cavities, both an infection, bacterial infection, a biofilm problem. And when that infection or bacterial infection is allowed to take over, it starts to infect your gums and your teeth, and your body starts to wall off the infection using the inflammatory response. Now, the inflammatory response is a great thing, and it is designed to do exactly that: heal an area that's infected and then turn off. So for instance, in the case of a splinter, your inflammatory process turns on because the splinter, your finger's getting a little infected from the splinter. The splinter comes out, the infection heals itself, and then your body's inflammatory response turns off. If in the case of gum disease or mouth disease from bacterial infection, the body can't stop the infection. So the infection is allowed to take hold and continue to grow, And the body is constantly using the inflammatory process to try to wall off the infection. So let's say in your gums, for instance, if your gums bleed when you floss between your teeth, that's a sign that there's an inflammatory process going on there that's not normal, because in normal cleaning, just like when you comb your hair, your scalp doesn't bleed. In normal cleaning of your teeth, there shouldn't be any blood either, because the inflammatory process is not turned on trying to wall off infection. So let's go back to unhealthy gums that do bleed. If you're trying to floss vigorously on the back teeth, that's how you can know if it's there. So unhealthy gums, your body's inflammatory process is turned on, walling off the infection, and it can't turn off because it can't itself heal the infection. So that inflammatory process is not localized to your teeth and gums. That inflammation is turned on through your entire body, and it turns into something called chronic systemic inflammation. Chronic systemic inflammation is the root cause for most Western diseases, including high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. So in most of these links, if one thing is causing the chronic systemic inflammation and we can eliminate that inflammatory process, then we can lower the tax that it's putting on your total health and lower the risks for these other health conditions, and also minimize their symptoms and even get them to start to reverse if we can eliminate the source for the chronic systemic infection. So one thing that you can be doing at home while you're in stay at home during this is to start upping your oral hygiene game at home. So since you can't come to the dentist during this time, do your brushing and your flossing or cleaning in between your teeth with dental picks or plackers. So start really upping your oral hygiene game, because in doing so, you might start mitigating some of the risk factors that you have for these other health conditions that will put you at risk for dying from an infection of this coronavirus. So that speaks to the population of people who are my age, and those kind of health conditions are starting to show up. These health conditions, the lifestyle type health conditions, don't turn on overnight. They take a long time to turn on. And it usually takes a certain period of unhealthy lifestyle to turn on. So as I start to speak to a younger population of people, the millennial population, it's important to understand that you could use this time to create really healthy lifestyle habits for yourself now and in the future, so that as the history book gets written into the future and we fall into more and more of these future pandemics or epidemics, you can start now creating a really healthy you so that you're remain at minimal risk for contracting these things. If you are in my generation and you already have some of these conditions, you can start applying small, healthy lifestyle habits to your daily life and slowly start chipping away against the other diseases until you get yourself out of the high-risk population and into the low-risk population. So this is one thing that I found to be interesting and informative for my line of work, and an interesting piece to share that you could just up your oral hygiene home game during this crisis and take one little step to reducing your risks to dying if you do catch this virus now or in the future. So I hope that helps with today's update. Hope it gives you something useful to do with your time, with a toothbrush and something to clean in between your teeth with. And there are a lot of other small lifestyle pieces that, as we continue to share these communications, I think that we can offer some hope to this crisis. Stay safe and stay well. Keep smiling while you hang in there.